So today on Wildflowers, the biggest mistake we find, especially new folks coming in, they're going, oh, I see the hills filled with poppies. I want that too. You can have that. It is very, very doable. In fact, super easy doable. You'll see the lupins, the flax. There's all these different wild flowers that grow here. Some things I need to make aware to you are there are different grades of wildflowers. And so what you'll really get into, if you see a really pretty package on a shelf at a mart or a box or something, and it says wildflowers, you probably don't want that. What that is, they've got annual seed in there. Usually it'll be real cheap, so you're really tempted. Pretty box, really cheap. It's all annual flowers. Annuals and perennials, let's explain that. What's the difference? What you want in your gardens, if you're starting a new wildflower patch, are perennials. Perennials and permanent both start with P, that they always come back. You just plant them and they keep coming back for years to come. An annual lives for the year and that's it, flames out, doesn't come back. It can reseed sometimes, but it won't come back from that plant. A perennial will actually hibernate underground. Let's say a coreopsis, gaillardia, there's all these different kinds of flowers. They hibernate underground right now. And then this spring, in fact, I'm already seeing my perennials coming up just before the snow hit. I'm sure they're sitting there waiting. You're going, snow, I don't care, this is great, let's bring it on, let's see the sunlight. And they'll start to elongate even more, they'll start to grow even faster. So your mums, asters, they're already growing. That spent plant that's there, I would recommend cutting that back so you can expose the new tips to the sun so you get more growth to it. So these are perennials. They come back from the same exact root and they oftentimes, most of the time, will reseed as well. That's the kind of wildflowers that you want, the kind of seed that you're putting out there. So that's the difference. The other trick that the trade will use, wildflowers, you get a really good mix, but wildflowers are tiny, tiny seeds. Some of them are like feathery, they're just nothing to them. But they create this huge, beautiful instrument. Well, they don't have a lot of girth to them. And so what they'll do is they'll add vermiculite to the mix to make it look like you get a lot for your money. What you really want is just a really good seed that's wild, that will grow here naturally. And you generally want a mix of seed. And what will happen is your phlox will be the first one to bloom, and that'll be the first thing out of the gate. And there'll be a wave of penstemons, there'll be a wave of gaillardias, there'll be this pulsating wave of mixed flowers coming up. And that's ideal for a cottage garden kind of look, or a wildflower kind of patch. If you just go with just straight poppies, which is pretty when it's in bloom, it's wow. So you get a month's worth of color, the other 11 months you kind of go, I wish I'd had some more flowers in there. You kind of want to add a mix is probably ideal for you. I've seen wildflowers out there in the landscape. I've seen them spilling down a hillside. I've seen them in containers, raised beds. You can start wildflowers almost anywhere. The mistake you don't want to do is, I've got this rip-wrapped hill. Rip-wrap is stacked rock on top of each other to keep things from eroding. I need some plants in there. I think it's rock is not pretty on that hill. I want flowers. And then you take some seed and you chuck them over the edge, go and be free and grow. That's not how wildflowers work. First of all, when you see the price, it's like gold. It's expensive. A good seed mix is expensive. And so yes, nature, that's how they populate the hillsides. They got 1 million seed, they chuck them all over the place, and then 1% comes up. Well, if you're nature, you can afford to do that. We want every single seed to germinate out of this mix that you buy and put out in your gardens. So a little bit of prep goes a long ways. So if you've got that rip-wrapped hillside up there, what I would do is create little pockets. I would kind of get some areas ready to receive some of those seeds. Instead of just throwing it in between all the rocks, let's be strategic. So I know I've got some little pockets or islands of color emerging from that, and from there they can spill out naturally and do their natural thing that they do. So you can't just throw them on the ground and expect them to grow. Some will grow, 1% will grow. But you just spent $15 for that should cover 100 square feet, and 1% comes up. That's not enough in my world. I want all of them to come up. And so some prep work we'll do. Will really help. The reason that now is the best time to start wildflowers is because most wild seed, they need the freeze and thaw, the cold, to crack open, like California poppies. It's #1 seller. We make our own mix because it's more than just orange. We got orange, white, red, yellow. They're all in the same mix, and they're all California poppies. So you get a variation in the colors. That's our #1 seller. Poppies will not germinate unless they go through a freeze and thaw cycle. They need to be scarified, or that hull needs to be cracked open. It needs that freeze and thaw, that expansion to crack that hull open so the seed inside can get out. And so if you were to wait to plant that until the end of April, May, I'll have that happen to some customers, we'll try to warn them, teach classes on this. And they put them out there in May and nothing comes up. It's because they didn't go through the freeze and thaw. If that's the case, and I talk to you, I'll go, oh, take them home, put them in the freezer for a couple days, and then pull them out for a day, then put them back in for a couple days, and then go plant. Then you can artificially do this winter nature thing. If you're a gardener, you know what to do. You can make it go even off season. Start them now so that you can put them out there. Already we're getting emails and phone calls going, Ken, what do I do? I put my wildflowers out, like you said, in January, and then it snowed. Oh no, should I be worried? And no, that's great. You're like a garden genius. What are you talking about? You did it perfectly. That's what you want. So the best thing you can do, I'm gonna myself spread some wildflower seed in my gardens after this afternoon sometime, and I'm gonna put it right on top of the snow. I'm gonna try to blend it in so the birds don't come and eat it, but I'll just let it go. The snow's gonna melt like by the end of next week. And as it melts, I want those seed to be going down where the soil helps disperse them, helps get better soil-seed contact. And so that's what I'm gonna do. Here are some tricks that I've learned over the years. Some of the seed are very tiny. I mean, a little scoop will go 100 square feet, where that's a lot of space for it seems like not many seed. They're hard to see where they go. And it's not practical you can't just spread them by hand. They're too small. And so what I do is I'll take a bag of mulch and I create my own hydromulch. So you can just take this, and I brought some samples since I'm doing some stuff myself. I take my wheelbarrow and I'll dump. I like the premium mulch. This mulch we make here, not here, but I have someone make it locally. This is the tailings from an old sawmill over in Taylor, Arizona. We've got access to the old saw tailings, 70-year-old pile of sawdust. So we'll harvest that, screen it down to 1/4 inch minus. It's real fine. It's not chunks of stuff. It's screened down real tight. And so you'll see a nice rich soil that's real fine. If you get chunks, it'll bury the seed and they can't get through it. And so it's perfect for what we're doing here. So I'll take mulch, not manure, way too hot for seed. Not topsoil, way too heavy for seed. Potting soil would be awesome, but it's just more expensive. This is half the price, does the same thing. This is what I'm using, mulch. And then I'll take my seeds. So this is Arizona mix. We make 3 or 4, we make 6 different varieties of wildflowers. We make our own. This is Arizona mix. It's our native, what you see on the side of the road, what you see blooming, that's what this is. They're all perennial seed. Sometimes the deer can come in and eat this, certain varieties. They don't like penstemon, they don't like the phlox, but they like the gaillardias. It just depends. So we also spun off and had a deer and rabbit resistive mix. They're the varieties that the deer, javelina, and rabbits just would rather not eat. Right now they're desperate. They've been eating things we normally wouldn't see them eat because they're natural. It's been so dry, they're just desperate. So they'll start eating stuff that they don't normally get. This is Arizona mix. What else? We've got a butterfly pollinator mix. So if you like hummingbirds and butterflies, you can protect it from the deer. That's a great one in your backyard or something. And then we've got a straight poppy mix, and it's just not orange. We've got mixes just orange in package. That's kind of boring in my world. We blend our own, where you get orange and white and red, different colors, all California poppies though. And then we've got 2 wild grasses. It's just a touch early for wild grasses. I'd probably wait a month to put the grass seeds down. So we made our original Western native grass seed mix. That's for scars of construction. We kept seeing all these septic tanks. They're taking a bulldozer or backhoe through, and it just looks, the project's done now, it looks terrible. I want nature to come back. And so it's wheat grasses, it's buffalo, blue grommas. It's a whole mixture of stuff. If you're driving down the highway and you saw a nice grass patch, that's what it is. It's pretty tall though. It was too tall. People still wanted this meadow look to it. They wanted grass but some flowers in it. And so the wheatgrass was basically cutting all the sun to the flowers, and it wasn't blooming very well. They'd reach over and fall over. So we created a meadow mix. It's all the short grasses from that mix. So it's buffalo grass, blue grommas, and then we put some wildflower seed in that as well. So now all of a sudden you do get a meadow where the flowers can come up and take a look. So those are the 6 mixes that we make here for this Central Highlands, the mountains of Arizona basically. So what I'll do is, this is the Arizona mix, and I threw some poppies in there. That's what I'll be planting later today. So, and I just put a scoop of each in here, and I blend it together. Don't feel like you have to go with just our mix. If you love yellows or more blues, add some phlox. Just take a separate seed packet of phlox and kind of skew it towards what you like. There's no rules with this. Wildflowers, you can make it look like you want. So what I would do here is I just mix it in. So there was maybe a handful of seed in there, and this will go 2 scoops and go about 200, what is that, 300 square feet. And so to go 300 square feet, that's like as big as this. It is hard to get that thing to spread out that far. What I would do while I'm mixing this up, I would, before I got my wheelbarrow and I mixed all this up, I would take a rake, a stiff tine rake, and I would go through the area and I would just rake that space where I want my flowers to go. And you want to open up the earth. Get rid of rocks, old roots, chunks. Those are things that heat up and bake the roots. They're not going to help you. They're going to hinder you. Or they'll bury the seed. You just want to open that earth up. Don't just throw it on the ground. If you rake it first, you'll get a much, much better germination rate, or the seed will come up more consistently. It's all it's ice chunks. Okay, that's not going to help me, but you just go with it when it's a frosty morning. Then I would mix this up, and I would spread this as evenly as I could over that entire area. There's a couple benefits with creating your own hydromulch. The one thing is you can see where you're spreading it. So now I'll take my shovel and I'll just kind of spread it out that way. The mulch also encourages seed to soil contact, so you get more. If any seed floats, again, some of these seeds are made to actually fly. They're very light, so they're made to kind of catch the wind and just float away. You don't want that. In your yard, you want them to be on the ground. So it helps those kind of seed to get on the ground. And then, most importantly, right this time of year, it hides them from the birds. Add some camouflage. Birds have a ferocious appetite right now, so you're seeing them peck around in the snow and stuff. Guess what they're looking for? Seed.
Your seed.
Yeah, your seed that you put out there. So you kind of want to protect them. So there's some multiple benefits with that. From there, I would spread this out as gun chunks. From there, I would just spread this out as evenly as I could. And then I'd take my stiff tines and I would just go tines up and I would just scooch it around, just trying to make sure I get that as evenly as I can. I get down to maybe 1/4 to 1/2 inch of this material as evenly as I could. And that's it. You're done. That's how easy wildflowers are. Class is done. Thank you for coming. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. What I also do for my gardens, I'll do a couple things. Humic, this is humic acid in a granular form. Humic acid is basically, if you take a compost pile and you get it down to its very last element, what will be at the very bottom of the pile is this stuff. What humic acid does is it feeds the soil, not the plants, it feeds the soil. the mycorrhizals, the beneficials, the worms, things that grow in the soil, it helps them. And when plants see a soil that's really active, it's growing, go, whoa, the soil's really, something's going on here, this is exciting, they want to root more. So with seedlings, you really want additional roots. It's all about the roots. You get the roots, you've got a great plant that'll last for decades. So I'm going to add this. Anytime I do my vegetable garden, I add this. Lawns, I do this. Anytime I'm doing seedlings, I add this to that garden patch because it helps to encourage deeper roots into that soil. So humics, one thing I'll do, again, not a fertilizer, a stressed plants. Let's say in summer you see drought stress, the leaves are all scorched. I'll go there. Take some of this, that'll help it root out. We need to encourage roots for your trees, your shrubs. That's how you use this. It's perfect for wildflowers. The most important thing is probably all-purpose plant food. I'll put some of this out over top of the seed. I guess it doesn't matter, on top, down below. It does, just get this on that area before you walk away and wish them well. I'll give it some fertilizer. Many of the places where you're adding wildflower seeds it's terrible soil. That's why you're doing wildflowers. You need to add some nutrients into that area, some vitamins and nutrients where the plants can take off, and this will actually feed the plant itself. It's cottonseed meal, it's bird guano, it's sulfur, iron, it's a bunch of different stuff. Again, we make it here for our plants. We mainly make it for trees and shrubs, but it works really, really well in wildflowers as well. So do that. Again, which one goes first? It doesn't matter. Whether you put humic, the seed, the fertilizer, it doesn't matter what order, just get them all down at the same time. You decide which one comes first. And usually with these, probably not best to spread these by hand. Probably best to use a hand spreader. Usually I'll have my hand spreader out so I get a more even, consistent pattern. And then also this product, this has an earthy, organic smell. It kind of smells, gardeners like it, non-gardeners kind of go, ooh, that stinks. It smells like manure. Anyway, it's because it's got bird guano in it. And then this is just a dirty product. Wear gloves. You're spreading it by hand, it looks like chocolate. And you'll feel it's kind of a dusty product. That's humic acid. So again, generally I'll spread this in my hand spreader, just for consistency and keeping me clean. Yeah. You could mix it in. I find I don't like that for myself, just because I can't be as precise. Too much of these products can be bad. So when you have such a condensed wheelbarrow space, I kind of want to have more forgiveness as I spread it out. So I'll put it on top afterwards. That's a great question. So trying to save step. If there's a way to save a step, I am all in. I am the laziest gardener you will ever find. But I've got nice gardens. So anyway, that's a great question. And then I'll keep it wet. I'll keep it not wet. That's bad. I'll keep it moist. So that's why this is great. A snow like this is just perfect because it slowly percolates over several days. Over the next week, it's going to percolate down, get right to you. And so it'll keep that bed more consistent. Where I'm going to spread my wildflowers this afternoon, I've got underground drip irrigation. So I've already set it up. It was set up last fall. I knew I was going to do this. It's on a separate valve, and so it'll just run to feed this every once in a while. I'll try to keep the seed bed moist, not soggy. The seedlings want to die. I mean, if you look at them wrong, they're going to die. They get too wet, they die. Get too dry, they die. Everything wants to die. So you kind of want to keep this balance. Do your gardener thing on them that you do. So monitor it, go out and test it, check it, touch the soil, see if it's still real wet. Don't water it. If it starts to get bone dry or it's dry up to about the knuckle level, and say, oh, okay, now it's time. So maybe every 10, 14 days you might water it. If we get storms like this, which we need, which we want, you might not have to water at all. The reason I do subterranean or underground irrigation for mine is, yes, they're wild, but I don't want them to look wild. I want them to look robust and beautiful, voluptuous, gorgeous, just blooming all the time. That's what I want. If you don't water them, what they'll do is they'll do the natural cycle. They'll bloom like crazy, look great through spring, come into May, June, they'll start to brown out, they'll die, they'll go all brown, they look terrible, then the monsoons come, then they'll flush more out, and then they'll look better again through the fall, then the winter comes. I want to bridge that gap between, I don't want that summer brown that you see naturally. I want it to look good, because you're out there enjoying the gardens when it's May, June, July, before the monsoons come. That's our best times. Well, I don't want them looking all brown and dead looking. I want them looking great. And so I just irrigate them sporadically and takes the edge off. You could do that with a sprinkler, whatever you got. I just don't like dragging hose around. And I'm an irrigation contractor. It's within my nature to bury pipe and have irrigation, add valves and stuff. Okay, there's a question in the back. Yes?
Just with regards to, is there a certain ratio of the humic and fertilizer?
Great question. Great question. So, what's the application rate for these products, humic and the all-purpose food? Each bag will cover 2,000 square feet. So it's way more than you need for a typical wildflower patch. But you're coming into the season, I'm talking to hardcore gardeners here. I mean, I just can't believe there's this many people here on an ice storm. It's crazy. You all are nuts. You could have broken a leg or a hip while you came in the garden center. I got on the machine, I got a 54-inch plow, and I went, oh, I better scrape this off. People come in, I don't want them slipping around. And this big plow did nothing to this ice. It's just skimming off, just happy. Then I put it in two-wheel drive and said, well, might as well have fun. We did donuts in the parking lot with a plow blade, just because maybe it would open up some of the earth. Finally, we had ended up putting like 100 pounds of salt out there, or ice melt. 200 square feet, typical patch, 100, 200, something like that. There's no limit, really, how big you want to go. It's just as big as your pocketbook. So you can go as far as you want. We sold $40 on a seed to someone yesterday. So that's because gardeners are thinking in terms of gardening now. And so with this, if you got some left over, great. I would say as long as it's dry, you can use it again. Just keep it in the garage or the garden shed, you're fine. And then come back at it after it starts to grow. What will happen is, if you're doing it this way, it'll just ignite with new growth, look great, and it'll kind of stall out in May sometime. If you reapply this in May, take right off again. Start to set a whole another set of flowers for you. So, or you can use it up in the earth. You're using this in your vegetable flower beds. I've always got these two products in my garage. I just always have some. There's certain things I just always have. Certain bug killers I just always have, because I know I'm going to see aphids. I know I'm going to see aphids in March. I just know it. They happen every year. So I always see thrip in April, always. They always come in April. So you just know there's this rhythm. There's always grasshoppers. Question is, how many in August? There's this rhythm that happens in nature. And so that's kind of how I do it. So this you can't mix it up enough, and you can't even see the seed. You will not find one seed in here, which is why you put this in there for the birds. It just camouflages it so you cannot see the seed. And I actually do bird gardening. Half of my gardens are for the birds. Will that thaw now? There we go. Yeah. What I'll do with most of my flowers have been pruned back. I took a lawnmower to them, or weed whacker is perfect for wildflowers. So they're seeded in the fall. They're looking pretty good. They're starting to fade. The fall color's out. Maples are already done. The aspens have already fallen. Their leaves have fallen. Gardens are looking like they're going to rest now. That's about the time I go out and just weed whack them. And I want to send those seeds, the extra seeds that are up there, just have them fly. Just have them go all over the place. If you want your seed bed to expand. I don't. I want them to stay where they're at. So I do a lawnmower. It just keeps them all right there and seeds them that way. And it's just easy. You could actually go out there with pruners. That's just work. I'm doing it quick and easy, fast. Some varieties I will leave intact through the fall. So Gaillardias and Echinaceas, specifically those two varieties, because they're seed sources for my birds. I leave them up for my birds just to get through winter. And I have a lot of birds. I mean, it's kind of fun actually. Out there, in fact, I was out in the backyard and a couple weeks ago, and I'm underneath this big juniper, and this kestrel goes, shoo. Kestrels are like a small bird of prey. just come zooming down. They're one of the fastest birds on the planet. Comes swooping down, shoop, lands, buzzes my head, funk, lands right in the branch right next to me. And he did not know I was there. Sat there in the tree looking around going, what can I eat today? And then he looked around, we looked at each other, and he just went, wah! That's magic in the gardens. And we are on the migratory path. There's a whole system of birds that come and go in the gardens. So in my front landscape bed, I've got a piece of granite that's been hollowed out. It's about this tall, and it's a fountain. Very subtle. Just percolates up. It's got a stem wall behind it. It's very decorative. There's art around. It's a garden, a true garden, not just my landscape. It's a garden you want to go into and enjoy. And so the robins a month ago were sitting there was like a flock of them, and they took turns. They're all lined up on the wall, and two would jump on the fountain, bathe, and they rotate. They just did this thing for like an hour or more. It was mesmerizing to watch. It was a dance in my gardens. And you only get to see robins like that in the winter. So if you garden for them, they will come. Wildflower seed, I think, are critical for that. It's a food source for them to nest and feed with. So it's super easy here to grow those. Okay, let's go over a couple of them. I brought some confused things. This should not be blooming, but it's been in the greenhouse. We don't heat this greenhouse, but it takes the edge off enough that it's just started growing. This is a scabiosa, or a pincushion flower, because the flowers look like a pincushion. It's one of the first things to bloom. Typically it'll start blooming a month from now out in your gardens. Here in a greenhouse, you keep the weather off of it, it'll bloom right now. I brought it just because, well, it's freakish. I don't know. These are butterfly landing pads. Butterflies just love this flower. It's definitely a food source for them. And so this one, and I noticed that javelina don't eat this. Rabbits don't bother it. So just they leave it alone. It's amazing. This is one of my favorites that I grow. I grow this in all my gardens. I grow this in containers. I do this a lot. Anytime you hear the word pink, pinks, carnations, or dianthus, they're all the same. They're the same family of plants. And so the reason I like this is its winter color. It's not in bloom. You can see the old spent flowers on it, but it'll start blooming again in March, and it just keeps blooming. It is amazing perennial flower. Most people don't think of it as really a wildflower, but it sure naturalizes like that. So I love this next to the edge of walkways, beds, because it tends to spill and flow. It only gets about this tall and then kind of mounds. It's a great little plant. Flower on this particular one, I think, is pink. It's about that big. It just loads up with flowers on it. And then if you deadhead it or pinch the old spent flowers, it'll go right back into bloom for you. Just right back, just like that. This is one I use a lot of, blanket flower or gaillardia. Again, it's confused. Yes, it's emaciated, it's small. It shouldn't be blooming at all. It should be growing. But under here, it's going just because yes, it gets down to 24 last night or whatever it was at your house. That's how cold it gets in here. But it's not exposed to all that frost and the snow and stuff, so it can grow. There's nothing to hold it back, so it just keeps going. This is one that I leave up in my gardens for seed source. This will turn into a nice seed head to it. Also spreads very easily. So this is in a lot of our mixes. Gaillardia you'll see is a natural. Again, animals don't bother this. Rabbits, that's a big deal for wildflowers. Deer and javelina, mainly. Javelina and deer and rabbits are the two that'll mainly kind of go after seedlings. I use this one a lot. I use this more as a shrub than I do a wildflower. This is wormwood or artemisia. I use it as a shrub because it gets about this tall, about knee high. It has this beautiful silver gray mound that's just spectacular. And it holds that gray. I whacked mine back last fall, and literally it's already coming up and it's looking nice new silvery blue color to it. It doesn't bloom, it just has this soft feel to it, and animals don't bother it. So I've got rabbits. I've got birds and rabbits in my backyard, javelina, and everything else in the front yard. So I have to always think in terms of What are the animals not going to eat? Society garlic. It's related to our edible garlic. It has a garlicky smell to it, and it's just starting to bloom. This one does.
Here?
What's that?
Is that hardy here?
Oh, very tough. Yeah, you can't kill it. It almost is too hardy. Yeah, it's very tough. This one, I have fun with this. First of all, it smells like garlic, so I'll use it to hide the smell of things in my containers. So the javelina can't smell my pansies or the things that I like to eat. I'll use this as a decoy or a repellent for some of my plants. It works really well. My most fun, if you're not following us on Facebook, you should. Or YouTube or Instagram, whatever your choice of social, whatever app you have on your phone you like to look at. Throughout the year, I kind of take pictures of my gardens, and eventually you'll have walked my entire garden as things bloom. I have this, I've got a Easter Island head container. You know the faces, big nose, big eyes, big long face? Yeah, I've got one in a pot. It is funky, I mean it's art. I mean it's just, I got a whimsical side of me. I put this in the pot as its head. It looks great. I mean it's just like everyone comes over and goes, you're crazy, that's fun. But society garlic, because it's easy to grow. I can't make a mistake with it. It has a long bloom cycle. This foliage is what it looks like in the winter. It'll actually get its nice green, fresh foliage to it with these great flowers, society garlic. This one, I love succulents. I use a lot of succulents in my gardens because they think they're wild. This one I brought just because the birds, the smaller birds, the finches and things, they use this as food sources. It's just emerging. And so I plant several just for them, and I let them eat away at it. So you'll see a whole flock of little finches come up, and they'll just all land on them and be pecking at the leaves. And it makes it look pretty rough. That's okay. These were planted for you, and then as soon as their natural stuff comes up they like to eat instead, it takes the pressure off. But at first, this is one of the first things to emerge in the gardens. So by February, this will start to emerge, coming up, nice little mound. And I just let them free feed on it. Then as the weather kind of allows everything else to come up, their natural grasses, their other flowers that they like to eat, then this will come up and be I call them autumn joy sedum, because in the autumn it starts to bloom, has this pretty pink flower over the entire thing, just magnificent. And then it hibernates underground. So it's been underground since November, and now it's just starting to emerge. It'll just keep growing like that. But anyway, birds are your friend. This is one that's kind of overdone. I have a lot of these though. We do these in rock gardens. This is hens and chicks. Your grandparents grew this. Just a bulletproof, tough, consistent plant, full sun. Curse at it, kick dirt at it. It just grows and grows and grows. And you'll see these pups come off. It has these runners. You could actually pinch it off and start some more around the gardens. So great little plant. Looks great in those bowls. So I'll plant this. I've got a big long table in the front. It's kind of our courtyard, but it's not where irrigation is. And I always forget to water. So I had two choices. Put fake flowers in there. Okay, that's not within my DNA. Or put one of these where I can just make a mistake and it still keeps growing. So that's how tough. They're kind of like cacti, only without the thorns. This is also related. This is also a sedum. This is Angelina cropstone, or succulent sedum. I like these in pots. This is as tall as it gets, but it puts these big runners. I've literally I bought two pots so I could mirror them. I put one pot, they're matching square glazed pots. I like to buy twos many times. So I use one as a base, and I'll have the other one up so I get some height on things. So I had this mirrored container, planted this in it, and literally these trailed all the way down the pot, down to the ground, and then kept running. I had to control it. I went, okay, that's enough, guys. It's okay. You're coming back to here. You're allowed to look good, and I pruned it back too, so it looked more manicured. But sedums has a little fluorescent flower to it. If you're not planting it for a flower, it's an evergreen. It looks like this. That's why you're planting it. But again, you can put this in an old glazed bowl, whatever. It's a fun plant. And then this one is a weed. This is vinca, or in the Midwest and South, you call it periwinkle. It's got several different names to it. It's a ground cover. It's as tall as it gets, and kind of mound over top of each other. Then it just runs, touches the ground, forms another plant. Runs, touches the ground, forms another plant. Has a blue flower with 5 petals on it. We'll sell this with blues. I think we've got a wine-colored, kind of red colored flower, probably some violet colors. There's not a lot of options with this. When you're planting this, is just you want an evergreen that just covers the ground. Don't put anything else with this because this will choke it out. This is just smothers everything in its path. So it can be a little aggressive, but in the right spot, it seems to do pretty good. Where I use this, I'll put it right on the edge of the garden where the irrigation just misses. And that's kind of where I trim. So the neglect seems to keep it under control some. I would never introduce this in the middle of a garden because it would just be taken, within 3 years, it would take over and there'd be nothing left but this. And you'd be going, how do I get rid of this? I don't know. I've never figured it out yet. And that's the class on wildflowers. It's a shorter class. 45 minutes, a record. So I can take questions if you want, or anything else you want to go out in the gardens. Not wildflower related, anything.
I just made a flower bed, hardscape.
Yeah.
And the thing I was concerned about with wildflowers, I thought maybe they bloomed early and then you don't have anything throughout the summer. Can you mix and have a wildflower bed and then introduce summer flowers?
Yeah, so the question for over here, he's created a new bed. That's a gardener. Actually, I'm not just going to garden right here. I'm going to create something. He's got a new garden bed, and he didn't really want to put wildflowers in there because he's afraid he'd just have a spring bloom and no summer or fall bloom. Not so. So a good mix will have all the seasons covered for you. So in our mixes, you'll have asters and mums for the fall. You'll have gaillardias, echinaceas for the summer, and you'll have flax and penstemons for the spring. That's a good perennial mix for you. So what will happen is, though, you do get this cottage look. So it's not just, the echinaceas blooming in red or orange. All at once, you've also got the spring plants are still there. They just aren't bloom anymore. You can maybe clean them up, but there's always going to be this wild feel to it, like a cottage garden is. So if you want that, that's great. Otherwise, you're going to probably go with individual plants and strategically create the design that you want. So you've got something in your head, I can see it, but there's a different form, a different place to use wildflowers. It would look very good, it would grow very well, it would bloom the way you want there. But that's the design element you want for that, is the question. Yeah?
Premium mulch versus potting soil. You said that they do exactly the same thing except for their cost.
Right.
I mean, because you do have 2 bags out there. One is potting soil and similar, and one is premium mulch.
Right. So we got time to explain that. There's 4 things out there. We make all our own. So, and the reason I did that, I opened a bag of mulch. I was selling Kellogg's, not to put Kellogg's down, they're a huge company, they supply the box stores, and they're just huge. We introduced them into the state. And I'm going, this is a great product, great product, great product, it works really well. And one day I opened it up and using it myself, and I found a horseshoe, piece of metal, and I went, that's not good quality, I'm sure it's a recycle yard. They had metals here, glass here, and probably human waste here, and mulch here. They probably all this different recycled things. And I just you only have to offend me once and it's over. I mean, especially if it's a supplier. Don't mess with me. Just be honest, but don't try to go under the radar. And so I went, okay, I'm going to make it my own. So I know friends. I know people. And so I went to Casa Grande where a lot of the ag stuff goes on in the state, and I went, help me do this. And so we found this product. And I haven't had a horseshoe or other things in there since, but we made 4 of them. One is the manure. So it's a barnyard manure. It's deodorized. So it's got different kinds of manure. It's not just, most manures are right out the rear end of a cow and right into a bag. And here, you want some? It's gooey, gross, stinks. It's disgusting. But I'm not putting that in the back of a Lexus. That's just wrong. I'm not doing that in the back of a nice car. And so we deodorized it. So now it sort of looks like this. It has a little bit finer material to it, but it's deodorized. The next one is mulch. That's this. And again, I've already described what that is. It's compost. Really, it's made for when you plant things, really created for when you plant a tree or shrub. It loosens the soil. So if you're up near Granite Mountain, it's crushed granite. It just, water goes right through it. Well, it holds the moisture around the roots so you can get it to root. If you're out towards the 69 corridor, the Yavapai Hills, going all the way out to Cordes Junction, it's heavy clay, caliche layers. It's hard as rock, it's mud. When in the rain, you actually grow as the mud sticks to the bottom of your feet. It's terrible. And so it keeps those pores open so it can actually breathe, so the roots, so it keeps the soil, or changing the structure of the soil. That's what that's made for. Then we needed a topsoil. You'll see that out there. Topsoil is basically this with some sand. Actually what we did is, we have the bottom of the pile of the compost at the sawmill. We take the bottom of the pile, which are real heavy fines, years and years of, it's a tighter, heavier material, and so it won't blow away as easy. It's made to fill divots, top dress things. You don't want to plant in it because it's too heavy. You could, but you tend to overwater in it. So that's topsoil. The last one is potting soil, going right to your question. Sorry, just drawing this out. Potting soil is where the science is. It's always the most expensive because you've got the most expensive ingredients. So you've got peat moss is the main ingredient. That's shipped out of Canada. I mean, there's only one place you can get it. And so your shipping cost automatically goes up. It's got perlite, which are those white chunks. That's a natural product, but it keeps the soil open so you get more breathing. It's very important for seedlings, starts, smaller plants. They need to breathe within the roots. And then we got a little bit of compost in it. So we've been tweaking this recipe for a lot of years. Soils are kind of like a cookie recipe. You're tweaking with it, play with it all the time. And then we put a 5-5-5 organic fertilizer in it. So that's what's in it just has more in that mix. So it's $12.99 instead of $8.99. It's $4 more for, do you need it for wildflowers? Probably not. But if you had it, you could use it easily. It'd be great. The seeds would be fine with it. Just it's overkill. I'd rather use it at the top in my containers, raised beds. It's made to plant directly into potting soil. So I tell folks that have raised beds, hey, if you can take the top layer of your raised bed or container, take that top layer, put fresh potting soil in there, and then go take your tomatoes or your marigolds or your geraniums and plant right into that. That's our grower's mix. Our grower developed that decades ago. And so we've just been bagging it ever since. And so the plants, they don't like different soils. And so if you can put them right in the same soil they are already in, they just go, whoa, this is great. I'm going to keep on growing. There's no transplant shock. So that's the 4 things out there. I guess there is a 5th. There's bark, cedar bark. It's just bark. Enough said, yeah. What are you working with for seed starter? So seed starter, I would go the Waters potting soil. If you have a lot of seed, they actually do make a seed starting potting soil using a small bag. The difference is it's even a little bit lighter. So it's, again, seeds, they want to die. They're saying, please, just let me die. Just water me 1 time too many this week and I'll be out of here. Just let me dry out for a couple hours. I will be gone. I'm checking out. They're looking to die. You got to always be on top of your game until that taproot, till the first couple leaves come up, and then the edge is off. And so that seedling mix potting soil, it's down by the seed of all things. That's what that's for. If you're doing peat pots and little trays, that's what I would use. If you got bigger pots, you're starting the other stuff, we actually start our seed in the Waters potting soil. You could do that. It's just you've got a professional sitting there monitoring and watching it. Professionals, I mean, you all are gardeners, but you're advanced gardeners, but you're not professional. You got some guy, this is all he's geeked out on his entire life, and he just doesn't like to go outside the greenhouse and just nurture little plants all his life. They're not very people oriented, so they just like plants. That's a weird place. I would never want to be a grower. I'm not a grower. I'm too energetic and too outgoing. I like people, connecting plants and people together. That's my thing. Yeah?
If you have a walkway or a driveway and they have a perimeter planting, what are your thoughts on ice melt?
On ice melt? That's rough. So did you hear that? He's got a perimeter edge. He's got gardens along his driveways and patios and walkways. So what does ice melt do? They do make some types of ice melt that are not as dangerous to plants. don't use rock salt or you will kill those plants, or at least damage them. You'll see when they start to grow, you'll see the burned leaves. It'll affect the new growth, and then probably it'll grow its way out of it, but not ideal. For gardeners, my friends, they make certain ice melts that go safe for plants, safer, they do something like that. But still, I wouldn't put it right on the plants, but usually you're using these things over a large area, so a few granulars coming into your junipers or cotoneasters or whatever, probably okay. So just be careful. Same with water softeners. A lot of us have water softeners. I mean, don't put a granite countertop or don't change nice, expensive fixtures until you put a water softener in, or you're going to get that white, chunky stuff building up everywhere. I've got a water softener. During this peak of the season, I'm going to use potassium. They have additives that work with the softeners, so it reduces the minerals in the bathtub, the toilet and stuff, but it doesn't damage the plants. That's what I use. It's a little bit more expensive, but you don't use that much of it, really. The new water softeners are pretty sophisticated. They're much more efficient than the old style used to be. Probably stay away from direct salt inside that softener, sodium-based stuff. Yeah.
I was just at True Valley yesterday, and they have that eco-friendly ice melt, snow melt in 2 different size bags, like 2 pallets of it right in the front.
Yeah. So that sounds like that's what we got. So
Yeah,
True
I put
Value's
that
got
down
it.
Because even though we don't let our pets outside unsupervised, I still don't want,
Yeah.
sometimes they get out.
Yeah. I do notice that if you go with more rock salt stuff, the dogs will walk out there and it burns your pads or something. They start limping around, whereas the eco-friendlies, they don't seem to do that as much. You get pets, birds, you gotta be a little worried. But again, these are natural products. Salt just naturally shows up. It's not gonna kill you, but it can burn plants if you get it on too strong. Just be careful. It's gonna really damage stuff, okay? Again, I used a couple 100 pounds on the property this morning. So we buy a 50-pound sack, a lot of them.
Nice.
Yeah.
I probably go through a pallet a year of mulch.
Yeah.
And because of our soil here,
Yeah.
I'm putting down a bag or 2 bags of mulch and 1 bag of your manure and mixing it all together and just
Perfect.
put it everywhere,
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah. So,
Seems to work really good.
yeah, well, you're one of our regulars, so thank you for that testimonial. Love it. So she's putting down mulch and manure every year to her gardens. Plants are using this up. If you fill up a container or a raised bed, you actually see the plants use the soil. It doesn't blow away. The plants are using it. They're consuming it. The worms are consuming it. The mycorrhizal fungi are consuming it, which then releases it into fertilizer form, which then the plant picks up. And there's this whole cycle of soils that happens. And so if you've got nice gardens, you've probably been adding organic material every spring, and what the book says, a 2 to 3 inch layer over that entire garden area, because that's about how much it seems to disappear every year. So if it's heavily gardened. And so that you're going to have to actually replenish that. If you bought a house that a gardener had used, we see this quite often. Gardeners were gardening for decades here. They got a little bit older. They couldn't garden like they couldn't do it like they did. Just physically, they couldn't do it. It's just been let go for a while. So you've got these nice, it looks like nice beds, but then you really dig into it, it's crushed granite that's kind of chocolate colored. The soil really won't grow that much. You need to reintroduce organics into that because it hasn't been done for a few years. And so you can quickly get a garden up and going. And probably if you're starting a brand new garden bed, it can take 2-3 years before you get the soil up to where it's really a healthy soil. It's not like once and you're done. Unless you go raise beds. I mean, that's cheating. Creating your own raised bed, now you're bringing in artificial soil. You control that more, but if you're just amending the soil you have, out there it could take 2 or 3 years of additives to make that go. Another thing you'll find is there's no nutrients in your soil. You'll find you have to fertilize more often here than you do in other parts of the country, just because there is no topsoil. The little bit of topsoil that you did have, the backhoe came in and scraped it all off as not valuable, and they put your footers down your driveways and that kind of stuff. So many of us are gardening in literally dead soil. There's not one worm, there's no living thing in the soil, and plants aren't going to grow in that. They'll sit there and look at you, and they just don't grow. They don't die, they don't grow, they're just sitting there because the soil is not alive. So you need to think through, that's why the mulch was created, that's why you fertilize more often. So just some things that happen, yep.
So we moved up here just this past October.
Nice.
And, you know, a little under an acre lot. Rented an excavator and,
Nice.
you know, tried to get out some old mahogany and
Yeah.
scrub oak and stuff. Notice, obviously, that the soil is highly clay because we live just under the peak, you know, in the mountain.
Gotcha, yep.
And there's also a lot of like, I want to say like, I don't know what type of rock it is, but it's like almost like a shale underneath the soil.
Yep.
And we also we bought 5 yards of compost. And my question is like, having done the excavator, maybe gone like, you know, a foot to 18 inches down, what is the relatively rate that we would have to keep doing that mulch in there to help break up that clay? And will there ever be a time that we don't necessarily have to worry about the clay coming back, or, you know?
So, great question. So this is where the science of gardening is, right here in the soil. It's all about the soil. And those flakes or shale, that's called caliche. We got a name for it. It happens everywhere. So it's chunks of this layer, and it's like concrete. It just sits there, water won't go through it. So you broke through that, that's great. So it's gonna increase your drainage. Again, you're probably, if it's a garden area where you're gardening heavily, you got lots of flowers, lots of veggies, things that consume soil a lot, you'll probably have to do that every year. Add a 2 to 3 inch layer with some fertilizer every year, every spring. And so I wrote an article 2 weeks ago because I was getting my soils ready. I had them all turned. I turned them, put the fertilizer down, got everything ready so that we would have an event like this, moisture. I want to do it a month before I actually garden, so it has time to settle. I use some manure. I use quite a bit of manure. And so it's too hot to put seedlings and carrots and radishes and beets and all the collard, all those winter leafy crops. And so, but in a month after this actually thaws, I can probably start planting because the soils are ready, and now this has helped to neutralize it. So, but I do that every year for my beds. So it's just rhythm that I do. You'll probably see the same. If you're just going to do rose beds or something, probably once you're done.
Just layering on top is okay. I mean,
no, it's layering on top and one shovel's depth, or one rototiller blade depth is what the book's saying. So you're turning that in. So you're changing the chemistry and the structure of the soil is what you did. You changed the structure. And what will happen is the bacterial, the living organisms in the soil will actually eat all that up. And so you'll quickly go back to where you came from. It'll be a different color. You'll think, oh, it looks chocolatey, I can see, but it goes back to clay. So you need to reintroduce more organic particles in there to keep that up there. So to keep, probably it's an annual thing, or at least every 2 years at minimum, would be my guess. Great question. And you get a feel for it. So you'll go, oh, my lilacs bloomed so great last year. Why didn't they bloom this year very well? It's going to come down to food. They didn't fertilize, help it enough, and so it stops blooming. Yeah?
We have a lot of acid. How often do you add lime? Do you recommend it?
Sure. So lime. How often do we add lime to our soils? Is that the question I heard? Perfect. Never. If you're watering at all, our water has lime in it. It's very high in pH. In fact, it's a problem. It's too much for most gardens. So you'll find that your pH creeps up, the plants start to yellow, and then they stop blooming. Now they'll start to defoliate. That's all too much. It's too limey, too high a pH. You'll add lime to your gardens if it's heavily worked over many, many years, which is not very many gardens. That's more of a Midwest, East Coast thing. There they add lime to sweeten the soil. HGTV, Fine Garden Magazine, they tell you to do. Don't ever do that here. The second one you never do here that the rest of the country does, don't ever add wood ash to your gardens. Don't take the grill, don't take the fireplace ash. Don't use those in your gardens. We already have so much. Thumb Butte is an old volcano core. Glassford Hills, old volcano. We've got every hilltop you see is an old volcano. We are gardening in ash. You don't want to add more ash, or you'll sterilize your soil. You literally kill it. It raises the pH too much. So we're doing just the opposite. You're always adding sulfur. Sulfur is the opposite of lime. So here we're always adding sulfur. We're always trying to bring that pH down. It'd be great if we could have acid soil. You'll never see that because the second you water, it goes right back up. Your soil takes on whatever your water pH is if it's an irrigated garden at all. That's why our fertilizer, this fertilizer here, that's why this works so crazy good. It's got natural ingredients, but we also put a little bit of iron and a lot of sulfur in it. Because we know we're dealing with locals. This isn't it was the largest Scots dealer for turf builder and that kind of stuff in the state, truckloads. And then it was the largest furlong dealer. These are national companies that they're making fertilizers for everyone else except us. And I tried to get them to change the formula for us, and they wouldn't do it. We're just a little Prescott, Arizona. They're not going to change the production line for us. But you go local and talk to friends and come up with, you can make your own. That's lots of sulfur. Good question. Lastly, I'll end with this. I'll end with two things. All season spray, when you get done pruning, you should get done pruning everything in the landscape by end of February, middle of March. You should be done. And I'll go through with this. I'll mix this up with a hose and sprayer, and I hose down the entire garden, everything. This is horticultural oil. And so it'll cover the eggs that were laid last fall and kill them off. Any bugs that are wintering over. I'm just cleaning the gardens up so I don't have insects coming at me this spring. So the aphids will be out right away. This is what aphids love. So they've been underground for a while. Now they got some moisture. They're going to go the second you get any kind of new growth, they're going to come up and start eating your plants. This will kill those colonies off.
All right. How about thrips?
Thrip, this will work. This is kind of all organic, natural, cheapest you can buy, and it just really works. You just don't use this in the summer. Mainly it's a winter, spring thing because it's too hot, it's too thick, so the leaves can burn if you get it on when it's above 80, 85 degrees, it burns. So it's strategic when you use this. Yeah. Slugs? You see slugs already?
Lots of them.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, already slugs are out. That's amazing. This got to be that warm weather. This event will slow them down some, but you've got them there. Okay, so there's a bait down in the iron sulfate is what you use. It's called slug bait. Sprinkle it around. They'll come out, eat it, die. Yet it's safe for birds. It's safe for your pets. It's safe. Yeah.
I never see slugs at all unless it comes in on a pod from California.
I did find some snails. My nemesis is snails in the backyard.
Yeah, lots of
I was
snails.
pruning my what were they? Yarrow. Pruning back my yarrow with the
God.
lawnmower. Just looked kind of rough. When I want fresh new growth coming up, mowed it and I saw some slugs wintering over underneath. So I'm kind of lawnmower. Just kind of, but then I'll send bait out down there. Lastly, I'll leave you with this. I'm surprised they're out already, so it doesn't surprise me really.
Rock cracks.
If it's a smaller flower bed, one caveat I might add that would help you take the edge off, keep the blooms, regulate the moisture. For smaller beds, I add Aqua Boost. Aqua Boost are polymer crystals. They swell up. This would make up like this much gelatin. And so you add that into the soil and it holds the moisture around the roots so you don't have to water as often. It'll double the length of time between waterings, between irrigations, which you have to go to. Not practical for a big garden. I guess for lawns and stuff, I guess you could. But for a 10 by 10 square foot area, great stuff. I would spend the money on this because it's going to take the edge off, keep my flowers a little longer, have more flowers, just because you're regulating that temperature. If you travel a lot, remember when we used to travel? I didn't book my first international flight. No, I didn't book it. I got the trip lined up. Some friends and I are going to Israel in November. I got my shot yesterday, finish up next month. I'm going to keep my card because I'm sure I'm going to need it with the passport. And if the Middle East lets us in and ever again, so right now you can't travel. I'm hoping to see Petra and all the Middle East, Israel sites in November. So I'll book the trip. I'll book the flight maybe in a month or two. We'll see. Whenever you see international flight go. And then I booked my first domestic flight to Washington, D.C. July 4th. We're going to take our grandson, every grandkid that turns 10. When they turn 10, Lisa and I take them, just us, not their parents, not your sibling, just us, as a memory point. And so he's very analytical, very brainiac, he's very smart, too smart, smarter than I am. And he's only 10. I'm going, okay, you're in Space Museum, the museum stuff. I think it would be really great. I'll go introduce him to a politician. We'll see I'll book that so he can see the Capitol and see how we need smart people in politics, and he might do that. I don't know. He's smart enough to do whatever he wants. His talents will be, God will let his talent shine later, but I just want to be a part of that at the beginning. So we'll be there July 4th. Then you can see fireworks, best in the country, best in the world. July 4th in our capital, it's magic. And so anyway, I would sprinkle some of this in the soil when I'm doing that. This you could actually mix to this, or just fill it in early, put it where the roots are going to be. I put some of this at the bottom of every one of my tomatoes, peppers. Because if you get that watering off, the skins will get real thick, or they'll crack, because they're swelling so much. This takes that edge off, and I don't crack any tomatoes. Yeah.
Do you recommend adding bone meal?
Bone meal could be good, yeah. For wildflowers, not so much. I mean, yeah, that's overkill. Yes, that would make a big difference. But usually wildflower gardeners are faster's better. I want easier. So scraping it, the fertilizer's got some meal in it already. It's probably enough for wildflowers. What bone meal will do, it's 0-15-0. It's all phosphorus. That's what you put in the gardens for more roots or fruits or flowers. So yes, it can make a difference. You get better flowers. Also, lastly, wildflower seed, if it's good perennial mix, you'll get some flowers year one. The best show is second year. So it will look way better next year than it does this year. And that's for all perennials. Perennials, that's why perennials are more expensive. They're 2 years old. Whereas annual, you get a pansy, it's 1 year old. It's a 2-month crop. Starting to finish, they're just less expensive, easier production. Perennials have to be, they're at the farm for 2 years. You're nurturing these for 2 years before they're really glorious. And we're not bringing in sub-glorious stuff here. You're not shopping at Waters for something. You're shopping for, oh my gosh, I've never seen one like that. Wow. That takes some of the perennials are 5-6 years old before they come in and putting all those big Quito peonies. Those things it's a $100 peony. But it's like 7 years old before it finally gets here. You've been nurturing this thing. That's just the way plants are. So, great question.